The Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, a Good Omens multi-voice podfic written by Waywarder and read by
SkyAsimaru
and Djapchan. Chapter 3, Caretta Caretta. When you walk into the room, I can't speak and I can't move. You don't see me, but you should. Why you gotta make it hurt so good? Firstly, because I know you're all worried about it, Crowley was not fired.
Where the fuck have you been?
Bees demanded to know, already hoisting heavy boxes of undrunk liquor over their tiny shoulders. Crowley sauntered back up to their little bar in a bit of a daze. Words and phrases like cetacean and unhemispheric slow-wave sleep and Aziraphale drifted in and out of his brain. His tongue was heavy with prickly pear vodka and with things he wished he'd been clever enough to say in the moment. Bees smiled concern in their eyes, set down their large box, stepped forward, and kicked Crowley in the shins.
Fuck! If I let you keep all the tips, will you stop bloody assaulting me? What happened?
Bees demanded again, eyes narrowing suspiciously.
Nothing,
Crowley snarled. Meeting Aziraphale had been precious, a treasure that he wanted to keep private to himself for a while longer. Bees reared their foot back again.
Fine!
Crowley hopped out of their path, holding his hands up in a lackluster defense.
There was a...
Fuck. What did he even call Aziraphale? A man? Not good enough. An aquarium worker? Doesn't begin to cover anything, really. A miracle? An unexpected beam of light, waiting to rescue his pathetic, lonely heart and teach him about sea creatures?
There was someone.
Crowley finished lamely.
At the dolphin exhibit.
Bees nodded, crossing their arms across their chest.
And they were...
Again, fuck. What were the right words here? They were kind. They were a surprise. They were a huge fucking dog, but it was adorable and wonderful. They were smart and considerate and, fuck, handsome.
They were cool.
Lost in his memory of Aziraphale, Crowley didn't notice Bees go for the second kick.
Fuck! Don't be an idiot.
Bees seethed at him.
You've been gone for 45 fucking minutes. They were not cool. Fine. They were really fucking wonderful.
Bees hummed, apparently finally slightly satisfied.
And they were kind of a weirdo. They were really clever about the dolphins, and they did a short with me, and they gave me a ticket to come back here sometime for free, and...
As the story unravelled out of Crowley's mouth, he felt his heartbeat begin to go a bit out of control.
And you like them?
Bees concluded, more softly than Crowley had heard them before. Fuck.
How could I possibly like them?
Crowley asked, looking down now to the tickets still clutched tightly in his sweaty grip.
I just met them.
Crowley, fuck you.
Okay, I know I was late, but you are being a tremendous dick for no... He likes you, dumbass. And you like him, obviously. And he's given you a reason to come back. And there's nothing else you have to do, okay? You're not going to fuck this up. Give yourself a fucking chance.
Crowley immediately opened his mouth to argue, but... damn. This was a strange evening.
When did we become friends?
He shrugged, turning back to the bar for clean-up.
Spend enough time in this fucking hell with somebody. You start to like them, I guess.
They turned back around sharply, a finger accusingly in Crowley's face.
A little.
They corrected fiercely.
You start to like them a little.
A grin crept over Crowley's face.
So, what? Now I get to text you about how cute he is and everything he told me about the dolphins and read you my diary and...
Bees kicked him again. So, yeah, Crowley wasn't fired. But he also had the day after Pride off, and he had a free ticket to the aquarium burning a hole in his pocket, and he had the kind of support of a kind of friend. So he had wrenched himself out of bed earlier than he willingly had for as long as he could remember, and he had returned to the aquarium. He had just started to talk himself out of the promise of the entire enterprise.
He was just being nice to you because it was Pride, and he was working. He wasn't even that cute. Was he? Yeah, no big deal. This is dumb.
When he first wandered up to the side of Aziraphale at the touch pool, it felt like a massive wave crashing over him. This jet of longing straight to the guts. Aziraphale, shirt sleeves rolled up, leaning over the pool of little creatures, speaking so patiently and kindly to the children before him. It made Crowley feel something covetous down in his bones. He wanted to soak up the sunshine of that kindness. He wanted to drown in that fucking enthusiasm.
Crowley!
When Aziraphale said his name out loud with as much delight as if he himself was some stunning sea creature, Crowley nearly fell over himself.
Give yourself a fucking chance.
The ticket, the touch pool lesson, this upcoming behind-the-scenes tour, Aziraphale was giving him chances. Crowley didn't understand why, but he thought it might be nice to get with the program for once, to be on his own side, instead of wildly fighting tooth and nail against anything like comfort or happiness. He checked his watch as he wandered away from the spider crabs, which, by the way, fucking rad. 2 hours to go until he met Aziraphale at the staircase. He could make it 2 more hours. That wave threatened to drag Crowley under again as he approached the staircase, as punctual as he'd ever been for anything in his life. Aziraphale was already standing there, because of course he was, smiling nervously and offering Crowley a little wave. Crowley didn't have the right words for him. How did anyone find the right words to describe that gleaming hair, those brilliant eyes, that wobbly, soft mouth?
I should have been a fucking poet.
Crowley inwardly lamented as he shoved his hands into his pockets and walked up to Aziraphale.
Are you ready, my dear?
Aziraphale asked, smiling hugely. He looked about ready to shake out of his skin with excitement. The observation made Crowley smile. Whatever this cute nerd was excited about, Crowley definitely wanted to see it for himself.
I'm ready.
As they ascended the staircase together, Aziraphale fiddled with his hands, as though he were trying to hold himself together. Crowley wanted to reach across and grab them, hold them steady.
Be as excited as you are, Angel. Don't hold back.
Fuck. Angel. That's what Aziraphale was. A soft, kind guardian angel of aquatic animals. Crowley hoped he wasn't blushing too obviously at the ease with which the thought had crossed his mind. Angel.
I must admit,
Aziraphale mentioned, keeping his gaze fixed on the steps before them.
I was surprised to see you back so soon.
Crowley didn't immediately know how to respond.
Look, Angel, I'm as surprised as you are, but I'm trying this new thing where I entertain the notion of my own happiness, and I haven't been as happy in a long, long time as I was to listen to you ramble on about dolphins last night. So here I fucking am. Hope it's not as weird as I'm worried it is. Is it weird? Fuck. Give yourself a fucking chance. Honestly.
Crowley began, sliding a hand out of his pocket, now to grip the rail beside him, to keep himself upright.
I liked learning about dolphins from you. I wanted to learn more from you.
Aziraphale paused on the staircase and turned to look at Crowley, and fuck, his face was actual sunshine.
Really?
Really?
They stopped at the top of the staircase, still looking at each other.
Honestly.
Crowley started again. It is the best policy, isn't it?
I just liked talking to you.
Aziraphale nodded, and Crowley detected a slight twitch of his upper lip. It was the cutest fucking thing he'd ever seen.
Honestly.
Fuck it. We're going for it.
I think I just like you.
Crowley flinched as the words left his wretched mouth, but he didn't avert his gaze from Aziraphale's. He tried to think back to all the lessons he'd learned after years and years of therapy. What was the worst that could happen after all?
I think I like you too.
Aziraphale answered slowly, again as though he were trying to hold back the depths of his enthusiasm.
A proposal, then?
Crowley said, hardly believing the words as they escaped him.
Oh?
Aziraphale's eyes widened, just the slightest hitch in his breath.
I know you're at work, and I don't want to be weird or inappropriate, but I'd like to ask you out, and honestly, I'd kind of just like to already be out. On a date, I mean, with you.
Crowley flinched again, as soon as he'd said it.
I know it's probably not very romantic, since you're at work and all, but I mean, it's a lot cooler here than most people's jobs, I figured, and, okay, I probably should have thought this out before I started talking, but I think I might like you a lot, and I know I haven't even known you for a full day, and...
Aziraphale took his hat.
If I might now be honest with you, my dear,
Aziraphale said, softly, still looking up at Crowley like he'd hung the fucking stars or something.
I've sort of always dreamed someone dashing might walk around this place with me. I love it here, and I'd love to share it with someone special to me.
Aziraphale squeezed Crowley's hand on special, and Crowley wondered if spontaneous combustion was actually a thing.
So then...
Crowley croaked, all pretense of cool gone right out of the window.
This is a date?
It is a first date.
And they stood there a little stupidly for a moment longer, holding hands and looking at one another.
I probably shouldn't hold hands while I'm on the job, I'm afraid.
Aziraphale said, taking his hand gently back away from Crowley.
But I promise you I'll find something else wonderful for your hands to encounter before the day is out.
Crowley, blushing down to his toenails, quite believed him.
In fact,
Aziraphale's eyes widened again.
Crowley, would you mind terribly if we went off script a little bit? I have something rather marvellous to show you.
Wherever you want to go, Aziraphale.
Crowley said, and meant it. Aziraphale clapped his hands together, and there was that delighted wiggle again.
Follow me, my dear.
To the end of the world, perhaps.
They fled back down the staircase, swam through the ever-increasing swarms of people wandering around the main atrium, passed by the overpriced cafe, and finally Aziraphale swiped the little badge against the sept of double doors. He held the door open for Crowley, bowing his head a little as he did so, as though Crowley were someone to be held in any sort of regard or esteem.
Where are we?
Crowley wondered out loud as they entered the quiet hallway.
We are officially backstage, as it were.
Cool.
Crowley whistled, looking around at the copies of studies and reports plastered as giant posters on the walls surrounding them.
Are you ready to meet someone incredible?
Aziraphale leaned forward, some of that conspiratorial attitude back from last night. Crowley grinned at the sight of it. He liked that Aziraphale seemed to view everything as a quest of sorts, some important mission from a storybook.
Lead the way.
Aziraphale swiped his badge 2 more times to get them deeper and deeper behind the scenes. Eventually, Crowley found himself in a low-lit room, cramped with shelves and whiteboards and confusing bits of rubber boards with some long green stuff attached to them.
Enrichment,
Aziraphale clarified, following Crowley's confused gaze.
The trainers are always coming up with new toys and things to engage the animals.
The air was thicker back here with the scent of fish and salt water. Crowley thought back to previous first dates he'd been on, at trendy bars, at cool pop-up restaurants. He thought of how hard it always felt like he was trying to fit in, to perform at those sort of places. But Aziraphale seemed so in his element here, so sure in his confidence and his excitement. Crowley wouldn't have traded the setting in 100 years. He followed Aziraphale up a smaller staircase and behind a little gate. It was sort of impressive and far more than a little sexy to see Aziraphale so comfortable as he navigated behind the scenes. Each swipe of his badge for unlocking of a gate, he was clever and certain, and it was hotter than Crowley ever could have imagined.
Watch your head,
Aziraphale cautioned as they passed through the gate. Crowley did as he was told, ducking his head to avoid scraping against the suddenly low ceiling. There was a great pool off to the right. Aziraphale knelt down beside it and beckoned Crowley to follow him. Crowley did so, awkwardly going down to his skinny knees there on the floor. Aziraphale placed his hands against the rim of the pool and looked across the water.
Any moment now. Ah, hello, darling.
Crowley nearly melted at the gentle sort of reverence with which it seemed Aziraphale greeted all his aquatic friends. He was so focused on the broad, obvious joy on Aziraphale's face that he very nearly didn't notice the turtles suddenly bobbing up in the water before them.
Huh? Oh.
Crowley jerked back a bit in surprise, unsure as to whether or not his fingers needed to be quite so close to the animal's face. Aziraphale laughed gently and reached his hand down into the water.
Crowley, meet TJ.
Hello.
Crowley offered, desperate to prove to Aziraphale that he was also capable of being polite and brave.
TJ is a juvenile loggerhead sea turtle.
Aziraphale continued, stroking his fingers now against TJ's impressive shell.
Can he feel that?
Crowley asked, keeping his fingers back, but leaning his face closer to the water.
He can. Sea turtles have nerve endings in their shells. TJ enjoys a good scratch from time to time. In the ocean, they're known to rub up against rocks and other things.
As if to prove his active involvement in the proceedings, TJ lifted his little face out of the water, inhaled deeply, and dove back down, positioning his shell more closely to Aziraphale's fingers.
Can I?
Please.
Crowley brought his own hand down to TJ's shell. It was bumpy, a little pointy at some places.
Scutes,
Aziraphale said, as if he could read Crowley's mind.
the plates on their shells are called scutes.
Aziraphale slid his legs out from under himself and instead adopted a cross-legged seat, leaning his chin against one hand now as he continued to pet TJ with the other. He looked so exceptionally comfortable and soft. Crowley greatly wanted to slide up next to him and lean his head against Aziraphale's shoulder and stare down at TJ for the rest of time.
Where does TJ come from?
Aziraphale sighed a bit at that, a little sadness seeping into his voice.
TJ is a rescue, Crowley. Hopefully, after enough rehabilitation here at the aquarium, he'll be able to return home to the ocean.
I didn't know any of them ever went back.
Each animal has their own unique story.
Aziraphale explained, his fingers grazing Crowley's as they touched TJ together.
You like stories?
Crowley observed. Aziraphale looked up at him and smiled.
I'm certainly enjoying this one. It's been quite unexpected so far. I like that. Good intrigue, surprising pacing.
Aziraphale pulled his hand back and checked the watch around his wrist. His face fell.
I'm afraid I need to be getting back.
Crowley nodded, of course. They'd only ever had this hour.
But I'm off at 4 o'clock, and the aquarium doesn't close until 9 tonight. There's still so much I could show you, if you like.
This time Crowley reached out for Aziraphale's damp seawater hand and held it in his own.
I mean, what good first date lasts just an hour, really?
Quite right. Exceptional logic.
They bid farewell to TJ, and then Aziraphale led Crowley back through all the gates and locked doors and official hallways. They walked past the overpriced cafe and found themselves again in the center of the atrium.
Well,
Aziraphale breathed, looking more nervous again amidst the crowds of people.
at 4 o'clock, then?
Crowley nodded, feeling nervous now himself. Back in the bright lights of the atrium, some of the behind-the-scenes fairy tales slipped away, and he felt terribly aware of himself, of the awkward, surely scrawny caterer who had only met this kind person one night prior, who didn't know fucking anything about sea creatures. Here, outside of the dim light of TJ's habitat, surely Aziraphale would see him for what he was now.
Is this going well?
Aziraphale whispered, eyes starting up to meet Crowley's gaze, voice trembling ever so slightly. Crowley's own nerves disappeared. All he wanted was for Aziraphale to be as sure of himself as Crowley was of him. Fuck his own fucking anxieties.
You introduced me to an actual sea turtle,
Crowley said, firmly, wanting to reach out and hold Aziraphale by the shoulders as he said it.
This is the best first date I've ever been on. And the strangest. And the most unexpected. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to be strange and unexpected.
I've lots more to show you.
Aziraphale said, and it sounded almost like a warning. Crowley laughed at his tone.
Bring it on, Aziraphale.
At 3 o'clock?
Aziraphale looked away, a blush spreading over his cheeks.
I'll be narrating the whale shark feeding, if you'd like to watch.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Crowley had never swept an aquarium docent off their feet before, but if Aziraphale's face was any indication, he felt like he was rather crushing it. Crowley very rarely felt like he was crushing it.
Lovely. Till then.
And there was the little wave again, and then he was off, hurrying back across the atrium. Crowley retrieved his mobile from his pocket and set about composing a particularly proud and soppy text to bees, thrilled they weren't in kicking range. Is it too late or too soon? I'm right outside here wanting you. You don't see me, but you should. Why you gotta make it hurt so good? To be continued in Chapter 4.